My name is Jeremy Broun and I'm a furniture maker, and you'd be forgiven for thinking I'm English, but the name Broun is actually more than a wee bit Scottish. Okay, well, I spent a fair bit of my formative years here at Carbeth Estate north of Glasgow, where my mother grew up. My grandfather started up the Carbeth Huts in the 1920s, which sadly became a political battleground in recent years under the ownership of my cousin. Now, I started making this film in November 2013, mainly as a personal memory of my Scottish roots, but now on the verge of Scotland possibly going independent, I felt the Carbeth Huts issue has some relevance to the political landscape now about to change. My mother died having me, and when my father died when I was 17, my uncle and aunt became my guardians, and their new home, Carbeth Guthrie, which is next to the Carbeth Estate, became my home for a few years. In fact, a home to other relatives in subsequent years, so my aunt and uncle showed great generosity and kindness. Now, sadly, this last trip from Bath, where I live, was to attend my aunt's funeral. She lived to her 90th year. I have very fond memories of coming to Carbeth from as early as 8 or 9 years of age, taking the steam trains up, fishing on the loch, which was later emptied to get rid of pike that were eating the trout, and even my aunt helped. And I also made the long trek from my Wiltshire home in the severe winter of 1962 on a 1944 James motorcycle. It took 3 days and I literally froze on the bike. But there was always a warm welcome waiting from my aunt and uncle and cousins at Carbeth Guthrie. Now, the house was taken over some time ago by my cousin Alan, and very recently it was sold, and Alan moved to Carbeth, the previous home of our grandmother. So I'm just down by the boathouse, and I'm with Moira, Alan's wife, and Moira, tell me what's going on here.
This is Carbeth Loch, and it really is a jewel, the jewel in the crown of the Carbeth estate. It's a beautiful area, and it's a triple SI, a site of scientific interest. I think that's because of the weeds and the plant growth that's here, and we also get a lot of geese, ducks, and I think there's a family of mute swans resident. So it's a really interesting area that changes every day when you come down. And this is the first ice that we've actually seen in the loch this year. So it's just beautiful. See that little group of white houses?
The farmhouses there.
The farmhouses, and I'm sure one of Aunt Willie's early paintings.
Oh really? This is Wilhelmina Barnes-Graham, the painter who was Alan and my aunt. It's so still here, isn't it? I mean, last time I came down here as a boy almost, I was confronted by a deer.
Oh yeah, the deer.
You've got lots of those.
There's a lot of those. In fact, that's my current headache, is how to create a vegetable plot. But so the deer can come into the garden, but not share the vegetables. They'll share most things, but not my vegetables. Oh!
And I'm going to take a walk now to Cregalion Loch and Estate, where my dear grandmother, who died at the age of 102, she was brought up as a child. Just down here, down the valley, is or was Carbeth, the swimming pool, which was a small mini loch, if you like, that was dammed up, and my uncle and aunt, indeed my granddad before them, would hold swimming galas in the 1950s and 60s, where people from Glasgow would walk all the way out. It must be at least 12 miles to attend these on a Sunday. Fantastic slice of history, the days before the motor car. Oh, my dream house, to build a timber tree dwelling with all this land, my childhood dream. I don't think it will ever be fulfilled, but somebody's done it. And of course today the public rights of way, this is a nature trail, public highway for cyclists and ramblers around Carbeth Estate. Would you appear on my film and just tell me what you know about Cregalion Estate?
I don't know that much, but
it belonged. Tell me that it belonged to a shipbuilder, yeah? Because I think it did before my grandmother.
Yeah. So in the 1930s, there was the Cregalion fire about half a mile down the track, where the socialist workers from Glasgow used to come out and meet and keep the fire going as a torch, as a bastion for socialism. And right in front of the shipbuilder owner of Cregalion Estate used to be visible, and he couldn't do anything about it because this is the West Highland Way, an old drove road, so there always was a public right of way.
So it was a kind of protest.
Yes.
Without actually burning his estate down.
Yeah. I did meet a chap who was in his 90s. This would be about 10, 15 years ago. He told me a bit of his history because he actually was old enough that he turned out, and he was saying a lot of the people who used to meet there went off to fight in the Spanish Civil War.
Wow.
And most of them never came back.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Well, here we are coming up to the boundaries, I think, of Cregalion. You know, I haven't been to this very spot for, I think, about 30-40 years, so it really is a walk down memory lane. And I don't know whether I can get a glimpse of Cregalion from here, because of course I'm directly into the sunlight in this crisp November morning. You know, my position or situation is really odd, because I had the great privilege of spending part of my life being brought up and enjoying the fishing and the shooting and the country life of Carbeth Estate. Today it is far more of a public highway that other people, good morning, other people can enjoy, whether they're cycling or walking. And of course the Carbeth Huts became a very sad dispute, whereas I believe it started off as a very worthy cause to allow people, if you like, from the working classes of Glasgow to enjoy the countryside and just stay out here for a few weeks of the year. And this was back in the 50s and 60s under my granddad. But in recent years, when Carbeth Estate was handed on to my cousin Alan, it became a rather hot political dispute. But I think it was a worthy cause originally, but times change.
Yeah, the huts have recently been taken over. There's been a community buyout by the Carbeth Hutters Association, and that means that the hutters are going to be looking after running and developing the huts and keeping them, I guess, as a resource, mainly for people from the Glasgow area coming out at weekends. Huge range of people that have huts. From some of the people have been coming here for many years since they were children, and they're now adults and have huts in their own right. And it's a very simple existence, because there's no running water, so there's no toilets, no taps inside the house. So very simple existence. But
so they're still kind of, they're not primary residences?
No, they're not primary residences. And I think there's around about 120 odd at the moment, maybe about 130, and potential for about 220.
So it's still really in the vein of our granddad.
Yes, very much.
They were available for city dwellers mainly to come out and enjoy the beautiful country.
And the difference now is, I think it's moved with the times, in that it's a cooperative. It's a Hutters Association themselves that actually own it rather than the landowner, and that's very much in keeping with the Land Reform Act and land management in Scotland.
I think there were about 200 huts originally. Of course, being made of timber, they would have to be constantly maintained, and some would perish. But you know, I think I even stayed in this particular one. I could be wrong, but back in the 60s, I brought a friend from London to stay and do some salmon fishing in the area. And I'm sure we stayed in this particular hut You know, back in the 60s, it was almost a feudal social system in Scotland. I remember, whilst a student in London, I wanted to do a holiday job helping in the local inn. And my uncle said he didn't object, but thought the men working on the estate would feel awkward about it. They used to touch their caps to me, yet in England I was an ordinary, anonymous, middle-class person. I think the Carbeth Huts issue was a blatant case of class war, rooted in the historic Highland clearances, but interestingly the rhetoric used by leaders of the Yes campaign, referring to the Westminster elite, suggests class war is still alive and kicking in Scotland. Well, I came here yesterday, but the sun was really shining bright in my face, so today it's a little bit better visibility. So I'm now walking into Cregalion Estate, and Maura is going to show me a memorial.
Okay, if we walk on a bit, Jeremy, I'll show you the memorial that went up earlier this year to the fire that never went out. And this was, I think it was during the 1920s, 1930s, some of the unemployed people from Glasgow would get the blue bus out to Bearsden, or what we always call the blue bus, out to Bearsden, and then they would walk along what's now the start of the West Highland Way. They had a fire out here and they stayed there for the week, and periodically we'd go back into Glasgow. And I think just for any benefits, there was no work at all at the time. But now, these were the guys that, my understanding is that Alan's grandfather met and befriended, and that then came about the first of the huts being built. So they have actually built a small memorial which just went up earlier this year. So if we walk along about 5 minutes, we'll see it just the edge of Cregalion.
This is quite a long, straight run, and we'll get a better view, will we, Maura?
Yeah. Yes, we'll get a better view once we get up to the memorial. Cause it's
God, my dog's never had this kind of exercise before. Coming from suburbia or the urban jungle where I live. And that's the great thing, is this fantastic contrast between the life I lead down in Bath in England, which is a congested little city full of tourists, and coming up here and having the wonderful freedom, and the only people you come across are healthy hikers, so to speak. Well,
you can walk from here, you can walk from the edge of Bearsden. In fact, I have walked from the West Highland Way, which is at Mulgai, right up to Fort William.
Wow.
And then another year, some friends and I started at Glenfinnan, which is just in line with Fort William, and we walked up to the north of Scotland to almost Cape Wrath. We couldn't get the last about 6 miles up to Cape Wrath because NATO they use it for target practice. So we went back another year, a third year, and we did that last stretch, which was just up to Cape Wrath Lighthouse. But you can walk from here up to Cape Wrath.
And my God, and it sounds as though you're a bit of what they call an extreme sports woman, are you? And I see a badge there, RAB, which anybody in the know knows that they make very good bivouac tents and anoraks, so you love the outdoors.
Yes, but I mean, Scotland's a whole network of
Morning.
Scotland's a whole network of footpaths and drovers' routes.
Is walking part of the school curriculum in Scottish education?
I don't think it is, it should be, but there's a freedom to roam in Scotland, so you can, as long as you don't do any damage, there is that freedom to roam in Scotland, which is different to England.
Oh right, so you're not actually trespassing?
Not trespassing,
as
long as you don't do any damage.
No. But no, he's a lovely little dog. I've had him for about 8 years.
8 years, had him.
I think he's half corgi as well.
Corgi, that's Yes.
Strikes, you
So
know,
where
Yeah.
the corgi, look.
So where are you off to today?
We're just going up here to get a wee fire and get a cup of tea going and
Oh, lovely.
sit and enjoy
It's a
some of the
great
weather.
day.
Lovely.
Get
It's
lovely.
lovely.
Get
for
some
it.
whiskey out.
your day.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.
So here's a view of Cregalion, where I gather my grandmother spent her childhood. And Cregalion Loch is many times larger than Carbeth Loch.
My understanding was that it was your great grandfather built it, and it was subsequent to that that shipbuilders had it. So it's maybe worth us both checking that piece. I know the Connells, who were shipbuilders, subsequently lived there. My understanding was that it was your great grandfather who built what's known as the Khyber Pass route. The Khyber Pass Road, which is the road, if you carry on this route about a mile, it crosses a minor a B route, and that's known as the Khyber Pass because it cuts through the rocks. Yeah, so here it is. What we're looking at is a memorial that was set up to the Cregalion fire. I guess reckoned to be the site of the fire, what's known as the fire that never went out.
Well, the fire has been smouldering ever since, and it's sad that Scotland is split down the middle over a dream that's being sold as future independence. I may soon be a foreigner in my own country. I certainly don't get to vote. Now, irrespective of class, I'm proud to be Scottish, proud of how my grandfather, who was a stalwart of fighting minority causes and had a keen sense of social responsibility, used his privilege to offer his land to workers from Glasgow. I'm proud of certain traits that belong to the Scots. Innovation, for one. Now, it was back in 2002 I was invited to exhibit my handmade furniture at the Charles Rennie Mackintosh Centenary Exhibition across the hills in Helensburgh. I think I was one of 4 furniture designers based in England, and we were chosen because our work echoed in some way the artistic philosophy of Mackintosh. But I'm also proud to be a British furniture maker, and we lead the world in quality and innovation together with our Irish cousins. My passion is for creating things in wood, whether it's a musical instrument, a boat or a timber dwelling. Had my mother lived, who knows, I may have inherited a small patch of Carbeth Estate and built my dream timber eco-house there, and visited it a few times a year to fish on the River Endrick nearby. I could join the Carbeth Hutters, who now own the land. The future of Scotland is being sold like a soap powder with desperate sales pitches from both sides. Perhaps a coin should be tossed. When the vision can extend beyond self-interest and the impact unfolds, it may be too late to appreciate the strength and bonds of the past 300 years, not to mention progress. Well, the Campsie Hills and Dumgoyne will continue to look over Carbeth.